The Blind Date, a straight-to-gay male-male story by Jenny Goodnight. Chapter 1. Scott, wait up! I have something I had to show you. Scott almost sighed as he heard the shrill voice of his 18-year-old student. He was just about to reach his car and would have been free to leave if only he had walked faster. He had to stop and turn around. He just had to. No matter how much he just wanted to walk to his car faster and drive away. Kelly had screamed after him so loud that all the students around there were now turned towards them, and there was no way Scott could pretend that he hadn't heard her. She was too loud. When Scott turned around, he saw that Kelly was only a few paces behind him now as she ran to him, her beautiful brown hair flying as she ran. She had lovely ebony skin, and her lips stretched out in a smile, unaware of just how bothersome Scott was finding her. It was not that Scott was biased against that particular student. Of course he wasn't. It was just that Scott was uncomfortable around Kelly. Kelly is a popular and intelligent student in his class, but that was just what she was. His student. His 18-year-old student. And her obvious crush on him was getting awkward as Scott grew a little wary of her. Kelly, being the popular and bubbly girl that she was, could not possibly imagine that she could not have what she wanted, and she was constantly getting in Scott's personal space as she tried everything to get closer to him. Scott was young to be a teacher. He was just 24, but he was still much too old for Kelly, not to mention, he was not into teenagers. He was not a creep, so he had tried, repeatedly, to let Kelly down. Gently. But she never got the point, and now Scott was almost out of options. He either had to talk to Kelly's parents, or he had to inform the school board, which was not the ideal scenario as it meant that Kelly might get disciplined. The ideal scenario, however, was that Scott didn't need to do either of that, or Kelly would finally stop crushing on him. But even as Scott thought of that, Kelly finally reached him and stood much closer than he would like as she caught her breath. "Ah, Kelly. Sorry I didn't hear you earlier. I was just in a little bit of a hurry," Scott said, as he hoped she would get the hint that he wasn't really looking to chat for long after school hours. "What did you want to show me?" The way Kelly was just staring at his face told Scott that she definitely did not get the hint. Scott was not even sure what it was Kelly liked about him, instead of dating any of the other guys her age. He was pretty good looking, with an average height and lean frame and pale skin, and combined with the fact that he was a teacher, he was pretty much the same geek that girls never went for that he used to be in high school and college. "Not here. I have something to show you somewhere special. We can take your car since I didn't bring mine today," Kelly said, as she happily skipped over to Scott's car without letting him get a word in. "Kelly, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to hang out with a student outside of school," Scott said in his gentlest voice as soon as he caught up to Kelly, right next to his car. "It's okay, Scott. This won't take long, I promise. I also promise not to pester you anymore if you do this one thing for me. Please, please, please." So she knew she was pestering him. Scott thought about this as he paused for a moment. If she was really serious about leaving him alone after just showing him whatever she wanted to show him, then Scott could maybe make an exception and take her there. Of course, there was a chance that Kelly was going to do something really outrageous. But if it was too troubling, then Scott could just leave and finally talk to Kelly's parents or the school about it. He did not really have anything to lose. Kelly actually looked genuinely nervous to hear his reply, and it softened Scott somewhat. She looked like the kid she was at that moment. Scott also considered the fact that he could just be mistaken, and maybe Kelly just looked up to him and wanted his help with something. It was not like Kelly had straight out confessed to him about her crush, so he very well could just be making some outrageous assumptions. Scott was not an expert in dating and things regarding love anyway. All right, but I won't stay for long, and I have one more condition for me to come with you," Scott said as he tried to make his voice stern, but Kelly just continued to smile. "What's the condition?" "You'll stop calling me Scott and call me Mr. Hunt. I'm not your friend, Kelly. I'm your teacher, and you have to treat me formally." "Oh, that's it? Oh, then okay. Deal. You need to come with me now, and I will start calling you Mr. Hunt from tomorrow." The way Kelly's eyes were shining as she spoke made Scott a little unsure if she really was going to be treating him formally from now on. But he had to try. This was his chance to make Kelly start treating him like a normal teacher, which meant, hopefully, she would start ignoring him from tomorrow. If he wanted that, then he had to be firmer about it. If the thing that she wanted to show him was too inconvenient, then he would have to do something to stop Kelly. So, Scott and Kelly set out in his car as he nervously anticipated, with a little bit of dread, just what it was that she wanted to show him. Kelly, though, did not look nervous at all, as she happily gave him directions while Scott drove. When Scott recognized the Italian restaurant that everyone in their small town had been raving about since it opened, his dread increased. He also heard that it was extremely difficult to get a table there because of how popular it was. So, Kelly must have been planning this for a while. Scott readied himself for a long and detailed speech of just how inappropriate Kelly's actions were, without even getting out of the car as he parked the car in front of the restaurant. He didn't really want to walk inside the restaurant with a student in a small town with a love of gossip, but Kelly had other plans, as she opened her door and jumped out before he could even start speaking. Scott sighed with dread as he hesitated, but soon got over it and climbed out of the car and entered the restaurant. Kelly was waiting for him just near the entrance, before pulling him inside and leading him to one of the private booths. Oh crap, Scott thought as he reluctantly entered, hoping he could leave as soon as he let Kelly down. Gently, of course. But what he saw as he entered the booth made him falter in his step as Kelly continued to pull him behind her. Kelly's dad was sitting in the booth. He looked up at them with a smile as he heard them walk in. But Kelly's dad was just as surprised to see Scott trailing behind Kelly, as he stood up hesitantly with a confused expression. Scott could not help but run his eyes over Kelly's dad. It was impossible not to look, as he looked like he'd just walked out of one of those magazines, with his perfectly styled hair, sharp look, great body and beautiful ebony black skin. It was obvious where Kelly got her looks. Scott was not insecure of his own body at all. He might have not been very athletic, but he was not bad-looking either. His lean body was healthy because of his running, and he stopped being insecure about his height. He was totally normal, and there was nothing wrong with that. But Kelly's father was different. He was not normal by a long shot. He looked like one of those gifted people who was born with looks that captured the attention of both men and women because of just how charismatic he looked. It was difficult for anyone to compete with people like him in any way. His sharp jaw and captivating blue eyes coupled with his tall frame and athletic build made him irresistible.